Welcome back to another episode of Inside Medical Malpractice with Aleks Mladenovic. Aleks is a very successful lawyer with a personal injury group at Thomson Reuters firm. I've known him for several years, and he's recently been through a tough couple of years and fought his way back to his professional career. I'm thrilled to say that he really is back full-time lawyering now and living and looking towards the future. So don't miss listening to that podcast. I enjoyed every single second of talking to him. It's open, it's raw, it's vulnerable, but it's also got a really happy ending as he finds his way back to the work that he loves. So today in this podcast, we're going to talk a little bit more about Aleks and the person that he is away from the job of being a lawyer. And there's even though I've known Aleks for 15 years, I've never asked him most of these questions that are on this list. So I am also dying to hear the answer to some of them. So please welcome back, Aleks.
Hi, Chris.
Hi. Thanks again so much for being here. Let's just rip right into it, because I know you and I could talk a lot about all kinds of things. Talk to me, I'm always in awe of people who go into law, number one, because to me, it just seems like a difficult journey. And medical malpractice is the toughest of the tough, in my view. What got you into this incredibly tough area of law?
I was, do you remember that TV show, St. Elsewhere?
Loved it.
I loved St. Elsewhere. So
yeah.
As a kid, I was kind of a geek. I was really into medicine. I really was interested in all things medicine. And so I would go and for example, I bought like an old copy of Grey's Anatomy, and I would take that with me everywhere. I would read Grey's Anatomy like a complete and utter dork that I was. 16 or 17. Then I started volunteering at hospitals in my community. I worked in the emergency department at North York General Hospital. I worked in one of their labs. And so I did, that's how I spent my weekends, and it sort of became a thing. I went into undergrad, I studied biochemistry, and at the same time that I was doing my undergrad, I was working in the Canadian Armed Forces as a medic, sort of part-time, spending my summers doing that, or at least one summer doing that, and then continuing my sort of studies at MAC. And then sort of, I always thought that I wanted to go into medicine, but I had this weird final year at McMaster where I needed a whole bunch of courses, optional courses. So I took a philosophy of law course and a critical thinking course. And I just found it to be really fundamentally changing for me. I was fascinated by it. And my professor said, well, why don't you think about law school or take the LSAT? So I did, and got into law school. And when I started law school, I really enjoyed it, but I was missing that science, that medicine stuff. And when an opportunity, I was in the States, in Cleveland at the time, an opportunity came up to work for a medical malpractice defense firm. I took that, and then I came back to Canada and got my law degree here as well at Western, and I interviewed at McCarthy Tetro. All I wanted to do was medical malpractice. At that point, that's all I wanted to do. I was just hooked. It was at that point I was interested in doing defense work, and so I started working at McCarthy's, and I really enjoyed it. But there was just sort of something. I wasn't getting on my feet as much as I wanted to there, and I wanted to change gears. So it ended up moving to Thomson Reuters in September of 2003, knowing the firm because I worked against them on files when I was defending doctors. I moved over to Thomson Reuters, and I've been there ever since. And it was kind of, it just fit with everything I wanted to do. So it was a very early trajectory for me when I thought it was going to go into medicine, and then it went into the other way at defending doctors. And then now, of course, I'm suing them, suing doctors and hospitals and nurses, and not exactly the course that I had thought it would be, but it's certainly there in that range.
I'd say it looks really good on you too. You're very comfortable in both worlds, in my mind, in medicine and law. Your knowledge base is deep in both areas. So it seems like it's a really good fit for you. I'm always
Yeah,
surprised at how many people seem to just fall into law. It's not like
right.
something happens and then there's a moment and they try this and then they pass the LSAT and boom, off
Yeah.
they go. I've
Yeah.
heard so many stories like that.
My dad always wanted me to be a lawyer because I was very sort of vocal even as a kid. I would debate people. I'd like to debate. I like to do those kinds of things, and I like to write a lot. But at the same time, I like science. Although I have to say I was better at the writing than I was at the science. So
Yeah,
probably a good thing that I went into law after all.
right. That you're not some kind of a crazy scientist doctor in the background.
Right. Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that. You as a kid, since you brought it up there, because I've never asked anybody in the podcast this question ever, but because I know you as an adult,
Yeah.
I would love to hear what you were like as a kid.
Oh man. Well, I guess it depends on what time you catch me. I was a really shy kid, so I was an immigrant kid, and so English wasn't my first language. I was 4 years old when my parents and I moved here from Serbia. So I think I was initially quite shy, and my parents always wanted me to sort of open up. Well, I guess they succeeded in that. So
They did.
they sent me to the Toronto School of Drama. It was like this little place at Yonge and Bloor. It was this Marjorie Purvey was like a former Canadian actress in radio and television, and she ran a school there for kids for theater studies. And I started doing that every Saturday morning. My mom would drive me from Scarborough to downtown, and I'd do like 2 or 3 hours of that every Saturday morning, which I at the time hated it. But we would put on these radio plays, and sometimes we do stage plays. And then, once or twice a year, we'd have like a production where the parents would come and watch. And I think that kind of opened me up a little bit. I also started playing a lot of sports, tennis and water polo growing up. And so it just sort of opened me up to that side of things as well. So I went from, I think, being a fairly shy, introspective kid who liked to read books a lot, to someone who was a little more outgoing. By the time I was in high school, I think that was pretty much in full effect. You pretty much couldn't shut me up about political stuff. very, very vocal about those kinds of things. And so that's I think that's you asked. That's where I guess I was a shy initially kid, and then a loudmouth after. By the end of it all.
That kind of fits, I think,
Yeah,
and it's kind of good. And it's not like I label you a loudmouth, but I just love how you can talk, and I love how you will argue, and I love how you have lots to say about everything. It's one of my favorite things about you.
Oh yeah.
There's never, ever, ever a lack of conversation.
Ever a moment of silence.
I think I'm not that dissimilar. I'm not all that comfortable with awkward silences. And it's like, say something. Somebody say something,
right.
And amuse me, make me laugh, my favorite thing. So what do you do when you're not busy lawyering? What's your outside pastimes?
My goodness. During COVID, it's been, my wife and I have managed to work remotely, while at the same time taking our 2 dogs and cat to various cottages around Ontario and Quebec, and sort of isolating ourselves in that respect. Now that things are opening up again, I'm able to go back to some of the activities that I did. I play a lot of tennis, so I enjoy that. Other than that, I'm around here, around the house, being dad to the dogs and the cat, and trying to entertain my wife, keep up my level of conversation.
It's been a tricky time, hasn't it, to say the least?
Yeah, it's been crazy.
Here's just a bonus question, and I'm going to ask you this because someone asked it to me the other day, and I thought it was kind of fascinating. What's the most important thing you learned about yourself because of COVID?
That I really am able to function with a smaller circle around me. That I'm kind of an introvert in a way that I always kind of knew I was, but I think I'm able to function. Some people go crazy. They go stir crazy if they can't be around people all the time. I'm not that way. I like to be around people, and I have a really close group of friends who I love to see. But at the same time, I'm kind of able to pull away from that and just have it be me and my wife. And that was fine. It was less of a struggle than I thought it would be, being isolated and not going, to restaurants or movies or things like that. Maybe that's just because I have a really cool wife and she's able to entertain me and make our lives interesting. I always say I have a #curated life because she plans these elaborate dinners and cottages and things like that. And now that we're finally able to travel, vacation. So, that was maybe the toughest part, was not traveling, because we did a lot of traveling before COVID. We've kind of gone all over the place: India, Europe, we've certainly the US. We've done a lot of traveling. And so when COVID hit, we thought, well, now we won't be able to travel. Well, no, my wife, who is, very interested in moving around and finding interesting things for us to do, she found some great properties for us to rent. So we travel in a different way.
Nice. That sounds really good.
Yeah.
Sounds really good. If you hadn't become a lawyer, you mentioned maybe that you were really interested in medicine and science, but if you hadn't become a lawyer at this stage in your life, what career path would you have chosen?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of easy for me. It was either going to be medicine or law. And so I think I would have at least tried my hand at medicine. I don't know how good I would have been at it, but it's certainly something that I would have been interested in.
Mm. And what do you think the next 5 years look like for you?
Oh my goodness. Hopefully kind of like this. I'm in a nice spot now at work. I really enjoy what I do. I've got sort of a newfound appreciation for it, given what I've, been through over the last couple of years, with my health. I'm really just looking forward to enjoying my life, which I realize now has so many gifts, just built into it. I'm just looking forward to that, and taking every day as a gift, which is ironic and cliche, but absolutely true. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to this, what I'm doing, having this conversation with you, like meeting people and actually connecting on a meaningful level. That's what matters to me now.
I think that's gorgeous. And I don't think it's ironic or cliche at all, because the flip side of that is that you could have become so engrossed in the difficult time that you've been through and identified with yourself in illness and struggle and pain. So for you to come out on the other side of this, grateful and looking forward, seeing your life as a gift is a gift to all of us. Well
Yeah,
done.
I mean, I think we have an idea of ourselves. We paint this picture, this really colorful story of who we are, and we think that that's the truth. I've let go a little bit of that illusion. I think that we are this one thing, and we are a story. I think fundamentally we're way more than that. We're more than the sum of our parts. I'm not just a lawyer or a husband or, a male in this society, a 50-plus-year-old guy right now. I'm way more than that. And it's taken a long time to figure that out, that I don't have to, put on my lawyer face when I'm being a lawyer. I can just be a human being in a situation and take that for what it is. So, these kinds of situations in your life, they quickly strip you of certain illusions that you've been carrying around. They don't do it quickly. They tend to do it over time, and it takes a bit of time, but that's been an important education for me anyway.
Good one. Well said. Very well said. And so you've been at this very serious med-mal work for 20 plus years, or longer, 20 plus years.
20 plus years.
What is it that still keeps you going? What gets you up in the morning?
Um, the fact that I'm needed, the fact that I can do something, the fact that I think I have developed a set of skills, a set of principles that I can live through, the fact that I have experience now to, really affect people's lives in a positive way. That's it. I mean, professionally, that's what keeps me going. On the personal side, I have just a remarkable wife who I can't say enough about, who, I'm just lucky to be, with every day. And I have a great family. My parents are terrific. I got friends who care for me and have expressed that, over the last little while in ways that we don't always do because, you're supposed to be tough and then, not be open and vulnerable, as you've said. So, yeah, I mean, that's it.
Good. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Just
Yeah.
people, the relationships, and the love, and what's for dinner tonight.
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily have, any one thing that's driving me from day to day. It really is about the different challenges that we have in our work, in our life that come up, like waves sometimes, and you get to ride those waves. Or you can get buried or drown in them, but I prefer to ride them now.
Yeah, no kidding. Stay alive and well, the best that you can. I remember the last time we were together in person was in the Bahamas, and
Yeah.
we sat down. We had this brainstorming session one night about it was kind of on marketing strategies and things like that.
Yeah.
And, I remember asking everybody, there are 15 or 20 lawyers there, and asking everybody, why do you do this work? And a lot of answers came out that were kind of, I felt a little self-serving. There's a lot of money. It's important work. There's this and there's this and there's this, and we can get people a lot of money. And
Wait a minute, people are making money at this?
Yeah, that's what I hear.
What?
Yeah, lawyers make money. I heard
No
that.
way. Yeah.
You might be somewhere in the top 10%, but don't quote me on that. I'm not positive.
Yeah.
But anyway, I can remember, and it might have been you who said this. Someone just blurted out, because these people need us. And I was like, that is it. That's your why. And you opened with that. And I'm really grateful to hear that from you. I mean, that's the reason to do anything in life, is to make the world a better place. And when you said that these people need us, I'm like, right, that is your best marketing strategy you could ever have. It's not a billboard. It's not the side of a bus. It's not, this is the biggest award I got. It's like, you're here because people need you, and you provide a valuable service.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the biggest guy for marketing, I'm sure that people at my firm would agree with that and would probably take me to task sometimes. I'm more interested in outcomes. I'm more interested in, making that difference. It's great to have a big practice. It's great to have, important cases, but it's then again, what's an important case? I mean, everybody's case is important,
right?
To them, and it's important to me in a meaningful sense. I've had a number of trial cases now where the damages have been relatively modest, when compared to, a lot of the big files that I've settled. But they're no less important. They're just as important. Whether you're fighting for, $100,000 or $10 million, at the end of the day, you're fighting for somebody's livelihood, their well-being, sometimes their sanity, right? Because they've been twisted into knots by a system that challenges everything that they say, challenges all their, previous medical history, suggests that they did something wrong or that they didn't do what they were supposed to do, which is a lot of time what these people face, right? And let's be honest. It's not just, oh yeah, your procedure went wrong and that's why you got injured. It's no, your procedure, was fine. And then you had this problem, you never called us and never came back and never complained, or you were a smoker for 20 years and so that's why you got this happening to you. And there's a lot of blame that goes into these cases, which, and defense lawyers may not always see it, but it's keenly felt by clients, and it's very, very personal. And so, I'm interested in that. I'm interested in addressing those injustices, whether they be financially or whether they be, through, a mediated settlement or a trial, something that at the end of the day, the client can say, I wasn't making it up. I'm not crazy.
Right.
This happened to me.
Right.
This happened to me.
Yeah. Validation of the story.
Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's important. It's huge.
Of course it is.
Yeah. That's worth getting up for in the morning.
Yeah. Good one. What's the stuff that keeps you awake at night?
Boy, you got about 10 hours? No, I mean, what keeps me awake at night is how easy it is to forget all the important stuff that we've been talking about, how easy it is to slide into complacency, whether it's, to do with our environment, and how easy it is to sort of be glib about that or forget about it, whether it's, overlooking the real inequalities in our healthcare system and our justice system. We are only now starting to scratch the surface of how differently people of color, how differently women are treated by the healthcare system, than somebody that might look like me or you. And I have so much more awareness of that now, because it's just it's almost unavoidable when I talk to a client of color, the way they're treated in the system versus the way white people are treated in our system. There are real gaps in what should be a fair system, and that keeps me up at night. I wonder. We were talking about Andrew Somerville. He's a young white kid, but he came in after having consumed some beer. Was he treated differently because he had the smell of alcohol in his breath? Because that's something that was noted in the medical records. Was he dismissed because of that? What would happen if Andrew had been Black or Indigenous or a woman, or an Indigenous woman? What kind of treatment would that patient get? That keeps me up at night. That should keep us all up at night. Are we treating the people who we need to care for? Are we treating them less than? That's important. And as a lawyer, I'm always now aware of that too. Am I judging someone? Am I less likely to believe their story? Because sometimes the things that people say to you seem like, I can't believe a doctor would say that to you. And it keeps me up at night. Yeah.
That's big stuff, Alex. Some people just wonder if they turned off the oven.
I do that.
But
did I close the garage door when I left?
No, that's really good. And I'd have to say some version of that has been my big COVID lesson. And I've always valued myself as being a very compassionate person who could look after whoever showed up at my doorstep in whatever situation they were in, and whatever messy mess brought them there, because it's not always pretty. But, COVID has tested me in ways that I couldn't even imagine, like having to just understand and accept people's decisions around vaccine, not vaccine, protest, not protest, mask, no mask. And within my own family, there's every single extreme you can imagine, from people who have been vaccinated 4 times to people who will never, ever, ever, ever be vaccinated for a virus, and people who are protesting in front of hospitals, which I thought if anybody I know ever does that, they're done. They're
cut
done.
off.
Yeah, you're cut off. You're dead to me. It's over. And all those things have happened, and I've had to dig deeper and look harder and love harder and accept further, and really, do the analysis. Is this issue worth tossing this 30-year friendship away? Or do I need to go deep and accept that for whatever reason, this is the decision she's making about this issue at this time? So
yeah, that's tough. So how do you balance that? Because I struggle with that.
Yeah, I don't know that I have balanced it yet, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it, but it's just shocking to me because I always thought, and especially in labor and delivery, I mean, you very often have to deal with a mother who's made choices that have been unsafe for her baby. That, whether it's drugs or alcohol or lack of prenatal care or a million other things. And I've had to learn how to be okay with that, when people's decisions hurt and harm someone else besides themselves. So anyway, it's a new level, and I wouldn't say it's been a pretty process, and I wouldn't say I'm there, but I'm just interested. I think it's not dissimilar to what you were saying, just opening up your eyes to what's really going on in the world and finding a way to make some peace with it, and not just be okay with it, but accept it somehow, and carry on, and still treating those people as people, as real people that just have a different opinion.
They are. They are. And then the challenge is, how do you persuade in a way that's helpful and not, doesn't just serve to push them way further or down their specific rabbit hole. I mean, I'm a very strong proponent of vaccination and masks. I think they, frankly, they're saving us right now from what could be so much worse. I happen to believe in science. I believe in the medicine. I have a really hard time understanding people who refuse to get vaccinated or wear a mask or who protest. But we're going to have to figure out a way to have these conversations in a way that is compassionate and meaningful and not insulting. And I struggle with that myself, right? Because we've got protests here in Toronto too about mask mandates and vaccination and all that stuff. And your initial gut reaction is to say, like, go jump in a lake. Like, what is your problem? But we have different information silos in this country and around the world. And we have Facebook and Twitter and, Instagram that sort of isolate us more so than connect us sometimes. Yeah, and that's the truth. My version of reality is based on a different algorithm than someone else's version of reality, because they're just seeing things on these little, devices that we hold in our hands constantly, feeding us, whatever they think we want to hear, as opposed to what we should hear and what's in our collective best interest.
And some of it goes even deeper. I had my first vaccine in Miami. I was there last year. And the nurse who gave me the vaccine was a Latino background. And she said, I've seen nothing but you white people in here today, because she said Latin people don't trust their governments. They don't trust their governments. And so they are not coming, even the US government telling them this is safe. They don't trust government, period. So the Latinos are not going to get vaccinated.
Yeah, you see a lot of that in certain indigenous communities around the world as well. The lack of trust, and it's understandable, right? I mean, these people have been victimized by those governments for a very long time. So there's a great deal of skepticism that historically is going to be brought to bear. So how do you connect with those communities, those people, not just on a community level, but on a one-on-one level? That's a challenge, right? I mean, and we're facing it now. You read now that there's this new Omicron variant that's coming in that's going to, potentially upend all of our progress. How are we ever going to get rid of COVID if we don't extend vaccines to Africa, South America? If we're more concerned about patents for Pfizer and Moderna, for publicly funded and researched vaccines, then what does that say about us as a species, about our willingness to not only do what's in the best interest for all of us, but what's ultimately in our best interest? Because there's no isolating us. If there's one thing that we should have learned by now, is that we are not going to be able to isolate ourselves out of this.
No, we're one big world, right? We are one big world.
Right.
Period. Yeah, no kidding. Well, let's move off that topic, although I'm 100% sure we can talk about that for a day or two. But two more questions for you. What advice would you, if you could, go back and give to your younger self?
Calm down, man. Calm
Yep.
down. I mean, I still have to give myself that advice. I think, I don't know, maybe it's part of being like Serbian and sort of, emotional and passionate about, pretty much everything that I do, my opinions or my work or whatever. I get very, very emotional. I've been very invested in those things very quickly. And, it's great when you're fighting for your client to be, emotional, but at some point you've got to, put the temperature down a little bit. So, I think I've probably lost my cool more than I should have in situations where I probably could have kept it a little better. Not to say that I was rude or anything, but you get excited, hot under the collar. You get self-righteous very, very quickly in a litigation environment, particularly when you're dealing with other people who are also very, very passionate about their beliefs. And so I think the advice that I would give to myself is the same advice that I would give to myself now, which is just take it down a notch. Slow your roll, man.
Yeah. Calm down.
Yeah. I don't think anyone ever won an argument by being the loudest in the room.
Right.
Or repeating the same points over and over again. Even when you're right, that doesn't help you all the time. You got to sort of find your way through that. I mean, sometimes it's difficult because you just know that the points you're making are legitimate points and they're not being received in the way that you'd want to. But that's the world, right? Not everyone's going to agree with you, even when you're right, which I always
That's
am.
right. Which you always are. Of course you always are. I've always known that about you.
Thank you. That's why we're friends.
So, who has had a very important influence on your life, real or otherwise?
Oh, my goodness. My parents obviously have had a huge influence on me. They moved to Canada when they were relatively young, and that was in the 70s, a time when it was, not necessarily the thing to do to leave home and build a whole new life where you didn't know anyone. They shaped who I was. Obviously, my mom was very instrumental in, making sure that I was well-rounded. My dad was very, very, not overly disciplined, but was very much, you got to work hard at everything. And so that was huge. And then I got to say, my wife has absolutely shaped me in a way that I never imagined I could be shaped in sort of later in life. There's a bit of an age gap between us, a 16-year age gap. She's a millennial. And she, I think, brings to bear a certain energy and a certain open-mindedness of her generation. And that has permeated my life for the last 7.5 years. And it's been so much of the positive that you get stuck in certain ways of thinking. And then when you live with someone, you experience the world through their eyes in a way. And if that can't help but shape how you see the world as well. So it definitely has been important for me. She's definitely shaped the way I see the world and has, I think, changed me in a meaningful and definitely a good way.
That is such a lovely thing to say about any partner, I think.
Yeah.
When I first met her, I was a little bit like, only because I knew you so well at that time.
Yeah,
and I was protective of you. She just better be good.
Yeah.
And I ended up sitting beside her at dinner one night. And at the end of the dinner, I just thought, she's just absolutely lovely.
She is.
She's just absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you found each other and that you're still doing so very well.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, listen, with that, I think we'll close this off. I want to say thank you once again, Aleks. It's just been the easiest, nicest, realist conversation I've had with anybody in a long time.
Good. Me too.
Yeah, easy. I hope we see each other in the flesh sometime before too much more time goes by.
Let's do it. I was supposed to do a trial in Calgary.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to do that trial in Calgary. So I would have come to see you.
Good.
But now it's not happening.
Oh, well, that's too bad.
So we resolved it. So it's
Well, I'm
Sorry.
glad for that. I'm glad for
Yeah.
that. But if you ever do
Yeah.
end up this way, just get yourself here. We'll have a fun time.
Yeah.
For those of you, if you haven't heard it, don't miss the longer podcast with Aleks, where we talk about many, many things. One of which is a tough journey where he's come out on the other side alive and well and doing beautifully and thriving. And thank you so much for listening. We're glad you're here. And thank you so much, Aleks. It's been a pleasure. Take good
Thanks,
care.
Chris. The pleasure's been
Okay.
mine. Bye.
Adios.